Shelby here. Welcome back to A Little Literary Love. I'm glad you all are with me today. Today's going to be my end of May monthly wrap up. So these are going to be all the books that I read in the latter half of May. I read quite a bit of books in May. I had a really good reading month. A lot of books that I really enjoyed. So we're just going to hop right into it because I know I talk a lot and this video is probably going to be pretty long. Just like most of the rest of my videos, but it's fine. So, hopping right into it, first book that I read in the latter half of May is going to be Brutal Conquest. This is the second book in the Brutal Heart series by Lila Vincent. I read the first one in the first half of May, and I also read it for the Mafia Romance Readathon, which I did a vlog for. So this is another mafia romance. This is another taboo romance. We have our heroine who is, I think she just turned 18, something like that. But she's basically running the mob in her father's stead because her father has cancer and is going through cancer treatments and he's not able to run things like he should. So she's kind of somewhat taken over. And then her uncle actually comes back into town, and he had left. He was wanting to take away the reins from his brother and become the boss himself, but he has had an interest in our heroine. And they're not actually like true uncle and niece, like by blood. Her uncle was adopted, so there's no actual like blood relation going on there, but she has thought all of her life that he was her uncle. Anyway, so he comes back in town and he decides he's actually just going to support her and be her second in command basically, but he wants to be with her and he is determined to have things like come to fruition, I guess. I gave this one 3 stars. I did not like this one as much as the first one. I liked still the taboo nature of it. And we get a scene right at the beginning that's very steamy, but then this almost turned into like a slow burn of sorts. I got really annoyed with how long it took for these characters to get together, because she just kept saying, oh, you're my uncle, I can't do this, we're not supposed to do this, and then like pushes them away and then they don't do anything. And that just kind of annoyed me. And I didn't really care for the characters as much in this one as I did the other one. Like the first book of this series, I really loved the hero. Like he was a bad guy, like not a very heroic kind of hero, but he just kept saying things that just like melted my heart. Whereas the hero in this story just didn't have that same finesse, I guess. I did like that we have a female who's like the boss and in charge. I liked that, but otherwise didn't like this one as much. It was still overall enjoyable, so I still gave it the 3 stars. There's many trigger warnings in this one: murder, death of a loved one, because I think her mom and then stepmom both die. And then of course her father has cancer and is going through treatments. Steam on this is high for when we do get to the steam, and it's still very high. Yeah. Then continuing on with my mafia trend that I was wanting to continue reading mafia books, I read Surviving Matteo. This is the second book in the Morelli family series by Sam Mariano. This I wanted to get to because the first one left me very intrigued. I also read this for the Mafia Romance Readathon. Matteo is the like bad guy of the first book. He is the guy, he runs the family like mob, he is in charge. And so the second one is his story and his like love story of sorts. So I was very intrigued, really wanted to get to this one. We have our heroine, her husband has passed away. If I am remembering correctly, he's like killed or something. He Anyway, she has to pick up all of his debts because he liked to gamble. So he got in trouble with this rival mafia family to the Morellis, and they want her to, in order to pay off her debts, they want her to get close to Mateo and kill him. So they set up like a date for them to go on, and he very quickly figures out what's going on and then keeps her. And so, yeah, things ensue. I gave this one 3 stars. I, again, was a bit disappointed in this one, just from the sense that we get from the first book. I expected Mateo to be a lot more of a villainous type character and to have a better character arc of it being harder for our heroine to fall for him, and there being more of a conflict there, and better development of them falling in love. But it was honestly like he was tamer than I was expecting, or at least that I was led to believe he would be. So I was a bit disappointed in this. Our Mateo and our heroine do have some good banter, but this was just kind of meh. Then I read The Tryst by Lauren Blakely. This is the second book in the Virgin Society series that she has. I haven't read any of the other books in this series, but I wanted to pick this one up because I heard this is a ex's dad romance, and I am fully on board with this trope. I love the whole dad thing, like, and especially like ex's dad. Like, I just love it. This one is more of a contemporary romance, not as like taboo as I normally go for, but it is still, this was more just like a sweet and steamy kind of read. So our heroine goes to a conference and she meets our hero at this conference, and they decide to have like a one-night stand kind of thing. So then a month or 2 later, she's back home and she's meeting with her ex because they're actually still good friends even after they broke up, getting together, and she and his dad comes by and she realizes it's the guy that she slept with and wants to sleep with again. And they're like, oh, we can't do that. He doesn't want to mess up his relationship with his son. And yeah, so I give this 4 stars. I did really enjoy this. This was just one of those, like I said, it was sweet, it was steamy, it was a pretty quick read. It was honestly pretty non-problematic. I didn't really see any like faults necessarily with any of these characters. I enjoyed the development of their love story. It still kind of annoyed me that it was like, oh, well, we can't be together because, you know, you were together with my son and he wouldn't like that. I'm like, well, how would you know unless you like say something or ask or whatnot? Like, there was, I don't know, it just, that kind of annoyed me, but otherwise it was a pretty good read. Steam on this is going to be high. There are trigger warnings in this one for death of a loved one. Pretty traumatic death of a loved one. Our heroine has a traumatic past with her father who was killed, and then there's also assault that happened in the past. But yeah, so that one was a pretty good, decent read. Then I read Her Future Vampire Lover by Cassie Alexander. I listened to this on the audiobook. This was a very unique story. So this one is it was almost like a blend of sci-fi and fantasy. So it takes place in the future. So this is like a futuristic world, and we have a vampire queen, and she rules over everything, but she's mostly just like a figurehead. She has a like council that makes every decision, and she's just like there to look pretty, and she's can't leave her castle. She hasn't seen outside of her castle. She's never seen any of her people that she rules over. She has no idea. So her council tells her that she's supposed to get married to this vampire warrior, but he is trapped in stone, like he is spelled and trapped in stone, and she's supposed to get married to this like statue thing. So she's becomes curious and learns a way to awaken him. And he's like, nothing is as it seems. Why are you just letting them make all these decisions for you? What's the outside world like? Like he makes her start to question everything. Anyway, so I give this 4 stars. I just thought this was very intriguing. It was a very unique story. Nothing like I had ever like read before. This is much more like erotic in nature than what I was expecting. There are some female scenes in this. So I really enjoyed this. My little bit that I didn't really care for is I really honestly wished the love story, I like almost wish this story had been a little bit longer. This was more novella length. So I wish it had been longer just to better develop the love story between our hero and our heroine. But otherwise, I like the mysteriousness of the setup of this. I like the plot. It was just a pretty good, very steamy story. Then I read Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent. This is a novella in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, which I've heard is best to read in between the 2 books of the Crown of Nyaxia series. So that's what I did. This is about our heroine. She lives in this town. She's in the human realm of what am I trying to say here? Of the world of that the Crowns of Nyaxia take place in. And her town has this disease riddling the town. Like, nobody can cure this disease. So that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to find a cure for this disease. And she thinks the potential cure for this that she wants to study is vampire blood, and there is one vampire in the area, and so she goes to him and makes a deal with him that she is going to take 6 vials of his blood, and in return she's going to give him 6 roses, and these roses are quite unique in some way, but she's not going to tell him how they're unique. And he decides to take this deal because he's really intrigued by her. So I give this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this story. I fell for these characters quicker than I thought I was going to, so I just very quickly became attached to these characters. I thought the story was very intriguing, and I really liked their love story in this development of their love story and how they fell in love was just so sweet. Steam on this is more medium. Then I read Eta ? By Cassie Alexander, and this I found out in the story, this is supposed to stand for Am I the Asshole? So this is supposed to be like a paranormal rom-com of sorts. We have our heroine, she is engaged, and her fiance asks her, they decide to order a summoning kit and summon a demon for a threesome, which this is her fiance's idea, but she's just kind of like going along with it. And they summon this demon, and the demon doesn't want to be with her fiance whatsoever, just wants to be with her, and they become intrigued by each other. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. I enjoyed this one so much more than I thought I was going to be. So this turns out this is a sapphic romance, because our demon female and our human female end up falling in love with each other. I just really enjoyed this story. I was expecting it just to be this like cute, fun little like rom-com kind of story, but instead we got characters with a lot of depth to them, especially for a novella. So we have our human female. She has a lot of things going on with her. She's dealing with alcoholism. I don't think it quite ever comes out and says that she's like alcoholic, but she is dealing with some alcoholism. She's also dealing with, she's engaged to this guy, but she's questioning her engagement, if this is really what she wants. And she's also just she wants to be a better person, a better self. So she's going through all that. And then our demon female, she is a war veteran, and she is still dealing with the grief and loss of her love because her love died. So basically, I think what happened was that she she was like discharged, or like she was done with the war or something like that, and her love decided to go to America, or I guess maybe not technically America, I don't know, but they decided to go to Earth, like the human realm, and her love is immediately killed, and so she ends up killing the guy that killed her, and so now she's in debt, so that's why she's like doing this like gig as like a summon demon kind of thing. But it was just like very heartbreaking, and I loved how these two characters got together and helped each other out through their own things. It was very sweet and beautiful, and I really enjoyed it. There are trigger warnings, of course, for cheating, because they do get together while she is with her fiance, and then the alcoholism that I mentioned. My only thing why I didn't bump this up to 5 stars is that I didn't really care for their dual point of views in this between our two main characters, which is fine. But it got confusing because she never really announced like when it was going to switch to the other character. It just would switch, and it got confusing that way. So steam on this is high, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Then I read Nero by S.J. Tilley, excuse me. This is the first book in her Alliance series. I picked this one up because it's another mafia book that I was wanting to read. I'm not even really sure how to describe what this is about. Basically, this starts off by our heroine is in her apartment and she's watching a movie, has her porch door like open, and a man just climbs up onto her porch, comes into her room, and just like sits down beside her to like watch this movie with her. And that's how our characters meet. It was just very odd. And I don't really know how to describe the plot of this. I gave this 3.5 stars. I did enjoy this. It turns out our Nero, he runs a like syndicate mob kind of thing, and he immediately becomes intrigued by our heroine. He is the type of character, he is an obsessive and possessive alpha type character. Lots of red flags with him, but I very thoroughly enjoyed him as a character. I enjoyed him as a hero. I also liked he has lots of dirty talk, so I like that as well. The only thing I just didn't really care for, our heroine just fell very flat for me. She has a lot of trauma in her past. And I thought this would be great as a, like, that she would get a lot of character growth in this, a lot of development. I was expecting her to become this more like this very strong type of character, battling it out with this alpha male kind of person. But instead, she became more of like a doormat kind of character, and she just fell very flat for me, and I just didn't care for her. And I honestly don't really care for that type of heroine in my stories, so that's why it is a little bit lower of a rating. High steam on this. There are trigger warnings for definitely past abuse. That's where some of our heroine's trauma kind of comes from, but I do want to, she has a second book in the series that recently came out called King. I do want to try to get to that one and see if I like that one any better than this first one. Then I read Blood of the Pack by Cassie Alexander. I was just in a Cassie Alexander mood since I read the other 2 books from her, and I really enjoyed them, so I wanted to try more stuff out from her. This is the first book in the Dark Ink Tattoo series. This is about our heroine of this story. She runs a tattoo shop, but she is dealing with her ex is in jail, but keeps sending like threats of sort to her, and I'm pretty sure she is a shifter, like a wolf shifter, and was in this pack and then like got out of it. And then we have our hero of the story, who is a vampire, and he works at the tattoo shop, but he is dealing with this mystery of this friend of his that he ended up having sex with, and ended up being murdered. So he is wanting to try to figure out who murdered her. I gave this 3 stars. I didn't really care for this. I went into this expecting it to be a romance. There is no romance in here whatsoever. Our 2 main characters that the story is told about like barely have any page time together. There's like one little bit where they interact to each other, but the rest of the story, they have no interactions whatsoever. The sex and like the erotic like scenes in here are them with like other characters. So I just wasn't really expecting that, and I didn't really care for that. I can see where their stories will converge later on, and I did look. This is a very long series. There's like over 10 books in this series, so I think this might have been more of like a serial kind of story. That was just like serials that were just kind of like put out, and I honestly really don't care for those when they are then formatted into like books that you can like read. That's not my favorite way to read romances, and this is a big reason like why, because I don't like how dragged out the story becomes. And then our characters like never even like hinted like got together like whatsoever, or even really interacted together in this one. So I don't know that I'm going to continue this series, but I do want to try some other like Cassie Alexander books. Then I read Superbia by Colette Rhodes. This is her 2nd book in the Shades of Sin series. I read the 1st book a while ago, but it was like one of my favorite books. I love that story. It's like a monster romance, and there are shades, and then we have the hunters who try to hunt down the shades and kill them because they're taking energy from humans. And then like the 1st book, like you find out that's not what was supposed to actually happen. So that we have some women that are in like human women from the hunters that have been ostracized. They are taking refuge basically in the realm of the shades, and they're supposed to get together with some shades to generate energy for this realm. So we have our heroine, who is the sister of our heroine from the 1st book of the series, and she is known as like the greatest hunter to ever be. So she's there, and she's realizing that what she's been told all her life is wrong, and she was wrong to have killed all of those shades, but she's getting a lot of flack from all these shades. They don't really like her because they're like, oh, she's just gonna like kill us. And then we have our hero, who is like the head of the guard, I think, and he's very intrigued by her, but doesn't really want to like engage in any of the females. He just wants to like do his job, that kind of thing. But they have such a high attraction to each other. They decide it's one of those like, let's have sex and like get it out of our systems kind of thing. So they do that. I give this 4 stars. I did really enjoy this one. This is more of a, you know, that whole like grumpy sunshine kind of trope. This is more of a grumpy kind of trope. These 2 characters, they're very much alike in a sense, so I think that's why they connect to each other a little bit more than they do with other people. Our heroine from this one almost gave me a little bit of Nesta vibes from Court of Silver Flames, but just not as well developed and not as well of a character growth. We do still get character growth in this, which I did appreciate and I did enjoy, but just not on the same level as Court of Silver Flames. But she did give me a little bit of like Nesta vibes. And yeah, I just really like this. I just wish this story would have been a little bit longer to develop their love a little bit more. It felt to me more like insta lust turned into insta love, rather than an actual like love story, if that makes sense. And then final book that I read for the month of May. I was able to get this done in the nick of time. I finished this on the very last day. I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is a very, very hyped up book right now. It just recently came out and everybody is reading it. Everybody is loving this book. So I read this. This is the book club pick for like a friend group that we're doing book club for the month of June, but I just happened to get to it early. So this is a fantasy romance. This is about our heroine. Her mother is the dean of a war college, and she's going to this college, and she's always thought that she was going to go into the scribe quadrant. So there's different quadrants that you can go into to learn like a skill or whatever. So she thought she was going to go into the scribes, but her mother, since her mother and the rest of the family have all been dragon riders, her mother makes her go into the dragon rider quadrant, which is the most dangerous quadrant. Most people that go or try to go into this quadrant do not survive, and she's unsure how she's gonna do because it mentions, so our heroine has like a chronic illness of sorts. It doesn't ever actually say what it is, but it does mention that her bones are more brittle. She's more prone to getting hurt. So that's a big challenge for her with going into this. But I love this. I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. I blew through this. I basically binge read this as much as I could with working and having my kids. Any little spare moment that I had downtime, I was picking up this book and reading it. I loved it. I love the whole dragons thing. Honestly, there are dragons in here that are characters, and they were like my favorite characters. I loved our heroine, how strong she is of a character, how much courage she has to go into this quadrant where most people don't survive. And then I also love her compassion. I loved her as a character. Our hero of this story is very swoony, and I love that he's the type of character that he's not just going to fight her battles for her, he's going to help her fight her own battles, and I loved that. Steam on this is more medium. There are like 2 steamy scenes in this, and I very much enjoyed it. And yeah, I can't wait for the second book of this to come out, because this does end on somewhat of a cliffhanger. So I need the second book to come out, and she's announced that it should be coming out, I think, at the end of this year or sometime this year. So I should be getting it fairly quickly. I can't wait to read it. It was so good. So there we have all the books that I read in the end half of May. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. And otherwise, I will see everyone in the next one. Bye, guys.